And so when you're tasting coffee, you're processing that data. You're processing that information. And the same thing is true for music. Like you're processing your experiences of your past, the people who came before you, just like coffee processes the information left in the soil from all the plants that came before it.
Welcome to the Showcast, a show about music, culture, and Memphis.
As we live into our mission of building community through music,
education,
and diversity,
we look forward to interviewing artists and musicians and hearing about how they are writing their own stories,
building their own communities.
85 years strong, and with a rich history, the Levitt Show has stood the test of time as a beacon of hope in the heart of Memphis. I can actually do that one more time.
This podcast is brought to you by Orion Federal Credit Union, where a big part of us is being a big part of the community. Visit orionfcu.com to see how Orion is redefining banking.
Welcome to the Showcast. This is episode 17, and for today's episode, I spoke with Bartholomew Jones, founder of Cxffee Black, artist and community organizer. We spoke about the growth of Cxffee Black, how he maintains such a consistent output of music, his upcoming trip to Africa, and more. Now, here's our conversation with Bartholomew. Let's start things off with talking about your passion for coffee and its history and your work through Cxffee Black. How did that start? Where did that passion come from?
So for me, I was introduced to coffee growing up in the community. It's at all our functions, grandma house, church, that type of stuff. So I was like a junior usher at church. And so I once I became a junior usher, I was able to, get the little creamer coffee and sugar, the little powdery sugar and cream, So that was kind of my first introduction. Didn't really like coffee. I probably had a little bit of coffee in my sugar and cream. But, I think it was one of those joints where it was fun. And as I got older, my dad started introducing me to like Kenyan coffee when he went to Lemoyne. He went on a study abroad trip to Kenya, and I think that was really influential for him. So I kind of like in the back of my mind was like, oh, okay, coffee comes from different countries. I didn't know its origin necessarily, but I knew at least some coffee comes from Kenya. Then when I was in high school and stuff, we would go to Starbucks. So I kind of got introduced to kind of like coffee culture there through one of my mentors, Christopher Hare. He used to take me to like, coffee shops and stuff like that. We have like mentorship meetings and Bible study and stuff. So that was cool. But I wasn't really drinking coffee. I was drinking strawberry frappuccinos, which is a milkshake. You know what I mean? So the juice was busting though. Eventually I kind of graduated to like the caramel macchiato. I thought I was doing something. I thought I was bougie as a mother. You couldn't tell me nothing. And when I went to college was really when I really started to check out some like local independent cafes. I went to school in Wheaton College right outside of Chicago.
Oh, dope.
Yeah, I really fell in love with cafe culture. I was an elementary education major and a rapper as well. So like I was either there working on music or trying to do something at a local open mic, or I was there kind of working on lesson plans or whatever. Eventually I moved back to Memphis. Meet my wife. My wife buys me an espresso machine. Our first date is at a coffee shop. And
Wow.
she's like really encouraging me. I mean, that's the dope thing about Black women. One of the many dope things about Black women. Like, my wife believed in me before I even knew it could be a thing. Like, because I was trying to be cheap. I called myself trying to be cheap. I was like, yeah, we can't really be out here spending money on coffee. Like, that's not what we do. Grew up in a working class. My wife was like, no, this is what God wants you. You go do it. And I was like, you believe in me, and so it like blew my mind. My wife is actually our coffee roaster now. So it's crazy that it comes full circle. But yeah, man, I somewhere along the way, I found out coffee comes from different regions and eventually found out coffee comes from Ethiopia. And I remember Kendrick Lamar dropped To Pimp a Butterfly on vinyl, and a bunch of my friends, like who I did music with, were like, we all wanted to sit down and talk about it. And it was one of those moments where you actually talk about what an album means as a culture, like as hip hop culture, as a group of people. We all sat down and talked. And I think those are rare moments, more rare anymore these days. Like most of the time music comes out and, you hear it or you don't. But it was one of these songs where you had to have an opinion about it. And so we got it on vinyl. I got some choice libations, of various types. And then I had coffee there too. I had this Ethiopian coffee and I was doing pour overs. And it was really crazy. Like all my homies was like, man, I heard you talk about coffee a lot. This was like what, 2015, 2016 is that when Supreme Butterfly dropped. They're like, we heard you talk about coffee, but like this junk really tastes like blueberries. What'd you put in it? And I was like, nothing, bro. That's just what's in it. And having that conversation about the origin of coffee and letting people know it's actually from Africa and it was taken from Africa and from the African destiny or African diaspora and used to perpetuate slavery and colonialism, and having that context in the midst of discussing To Pimp a Butterfly, which addresses a lot of similar themes. It was like, man, this is a conversation or experience that should be more readily accessible. Like other people would enjoy this. I wish I could experience this again. And that kind of set the put the seed in my mind that like there's another type of experience to be had with coffee than what you traditionally see at your local cafe or in the grocery aisle.
Wow. Man, there's so much to unpack there. I love that, hearing this story and just hearing how you kind of grew into this, and how there's so much a big part of it is the passion, but then there's also the education and the knowledge that comes from learning about your passion and really educating yourself, which is dope. And I love the community building aspect of it, which you mentioned music being at the core of kind of you gathering your friends together. And I know as a musician, artist yourself, you are very consistent in your output of music.
Thank
which
you.
is
Yeah, appreciate it.
which is awesome. Definitely. I mean, in this day and age with streaming and tons of music is being released every day. How do you maintain that consistency?
I think it's a way of living. So, for me, making music is kind of a part of I guess it's part of my spiritual identity. So I think it's one of those things that it's just a way God has given me to live. You know what I mean? So it's like you got to go run. Runners gonna run. You know what I mean? Like rappers gonna rap. You know what I mean? Like teachers gonna teach. So to me, it's a way of processing. Making music is a way for me to process my experiences, and it's a way to interact with people and to both like process information, but also disseminate information. It's just like that's how I talk. You know what I mean? Like I don't know how to not be making music, even if I'm not recording it. I'm humming or singing, or it's just and I think that's a very black thing too. You know what I mean? I think that like it's a way we process, we just move through life. It's one of the tools that we use, like speaking, talking, and making music about it. And even my grandma, my mom's mom, who, I used to be at her farm every summer. They had like an acre of land down in Alabama. When she passed a couple years ago, and like she left a book full of poems. She was
Mm,
always singing, always writing. She's not a famous musician, but it was a lifestyle. It's a way of living. You know what I mean? And I think for
wow.
me, that's kind of how I process music. Is a way of living. It's not for any particular output or reception necessarily. It's just like you got to exhale. You know what I mean? You have to process that information. And I think it's a very, I guess you could say, natural thing in coffee too. Like one of the things we're going to Ethiopia here in 2 days. And one of the things I'm super excited about is like I've seen these videos online of like these black men in Ethiopia harvesting coffee. And while they're harvesting coffee, they're doing the same thing that our ancestors did. Like they're singing
Mm,
songs, chorally, communally. And it's like, yo, this is such a core of our identity as like children of Africa. And I'm sure it's true in other cultures too. I'm just not close enough to know that information, but it seems really special, and it seems like something, again, another perspective on coffee that is kind of missed. So to just have these rituals throughout the day where I wake up, I make my pour over, very slow concentric
mhm,
circles. I'm generally like listening to scripture or talking or praying. My kids might run in, and it's just this moment where I'm kind of gathering myself.
mhm.
And similar things with music, like I'm playing music and I'm thinking, I'm reflecting on my experiences. I'm trying to understand what it really meant. I'm thinking like, I want to share this with somebody else. And so like the same thing with coffee and music is this way of kind of like processing information. Like with coffee, you're processing biological information, like data that's been encoded in this seed, right,
Mm,
in the DNA of this seed through the soil and the other plants that come before it. And all of the things that a seed processes, it contains the blueprint for life in the future. And so when you're tasting coffee, you're processing that data. you're processing that information. And the same thing is true for music. Like, you're processing your experiences of your past, the people who came before you, just like coffee processes the information left in the soil from all the plants that came before it. And you're also thinking about, how do I project or pass down what's pertinent to the future? And, that's what a seed does, is it bursts new life. And music in the same way. In hip hop, especially, we're sampling from the past and trying to contextualize it, chop it up, make it make sense where we are now, and then we're going to speak some type of truth into the future, hopefully that either moves ourselves or our future generation forward. So, they're just very similar things for me. And I think for us, we want to share that experience with our brand, with the music we make, with even the design on the coffee. My wife does all our graphic design for the bags. And
It's
we even
killer.
want the bags. She the roaster, she the designer. I say she cook all the work. I just bag it up. You know what I mean? Like, but we talk about legal work now. You know what I mean? But she really is amazing. Shout out to Renata Henderson. Yeah, she's doing so much. She just got off an interview today with some people who are interested in investing, and it was
That's
it's so
awesome.
cool seeing her. And for us,
And I've
like,
seen her name on the music too as a feature.
oh yeah, she be teaching me how to sing and stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I'll be like, hey babe, did this sound good? You know what I mean? Like, how I hit that run you just did.
I love it.
Yeah, we actually met at my first hip hop show back in the city. I was like kicking it with some of the local homies, people like Knowledge Nick and CCDE, and was just kind of getting my feet wet, moving back to Memphis from Chicago. And I ended up getting like a little independent gig for like a 30-minute set over in Midtown, and she was in the crowd. And then we kind of talked after that. And then a year later, we were married.
Wow.
So yeah, she's been there from the core. First person to buy the espresso machine. She's our first roaster within the company. She's everything. So yeah, she's the queen.
Wow.
Yeah, you're gonna get me emotional over here now.
I love it. Black
And I'm about to
love. I love
leave.
it.
I'm about to leave for like 2 weeks. I'm gonna miss that girl.
Oh man. Well, speaking of your trip, I know you mentioned you're going to Ethiopia. Is that the only place that you all are going, or are you all hitting a few spots?
Yeah, we originally, it's been a crazy journey. Originally, we had 4 countries set. We were gonna go Rwanda, Burundi, Kenya, and Ethiopia. And then at some point, Egypt got added onto there, and Rwanda and Burundi and Kenya were taken off, and then Kenya got put back on. It's just for us, it's my first time organizing an international trip, and so figuring out the right situation with our host has been, we don't want to inconvenience anybody.
Right.
You know what I mean? But trying to coordinate schedules internationally has been really hard, and so we found someone who was able and available and willing to partner with us and host us, and so that ended up being in Ethiopia, the origin. And so I think it's kind of appropriate. We still got some tickets because them tickets was non-refundable. So we have some tickets to some other places that we just gonna keep pushing them joint out in faith. We talked to one of our hosts in Rwanda, and they said maybe March would be a good date for us to come in March. So that my wife's ticket, sister-in-law, and the littlest baby, all of them have tickets, but we'll have to postpone that. But we're going to Ethiopia to go and document the origin of coffee's Black history. And, God is good, and he is all the time. But if he wills it, then we'll be able to return to other countries and continue to kind of document and share coffee's Black history as it moves throughout different countries. But it definitely starts in Ethiopia. And so I think it's probably God's will that we start there too. So yeah, we're going to shoot a short documentary, independent. It's myself and our videographer, Michael Grant. He's basically going to be able to, he's bringing a couple film cameras.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. He shoots all in film, really talented dude. And yeah, we're going to go out there, put together a small independent documentary and do some interviews and really hopefully share this story in a way that makes an impact. And maybe we'll have more people as we continue to raise money or invest who will be interested in supporting us so we can hit other countries. But stay tuned. When we get back pretty soon afterwards, hopefully that month we'll be able to show a small snippet and and do an installation with some of the photos that we're taking over there. And so yeah, y'all come on out. You know what I mean? We'll have coffee. We'll have Ethiopian coffee from one of the places we visit. And be able to share what we learned, just a little bit of it, and just celebrate, be able to drink some coffee, hear some music, and, just celebrate being able to make that journey and come back home.
Word. Well, you don't have to tell me twice. I'm already putting it on my calendar.
Hey,
That's awesome. That sounds amazing.
Want to learn more about how you can support the Levitt Shell and its mission of building community through music, education, and diversity? Head to levittshell.org. You can read up on our 85-year history, check out our schedule of live and virtual events, visit our shell shop to grab all the swag, and find out ways you can participate in our mission, whether that's through donations, volunteering, sponsoring a show, or becoming a member of our Shell Circle. Once again, levittshell.org.
The crazy thing is, it had to have been maybe earlier this year. I saw a family friend of mine post on Instagram wearing, Make Coffee Black Again, the t-shirt, and they're in San Francisco.
Oh, wow.
It was just amazing to me that I was like, wow, like the movement is spreading.
It really is.
How does that feel, like seeing something that you cultivated here at home in Memphis now kind of growing outside of your backyard?
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways it doesn't feel real because I was talking to one of my friends, but there's this term, I call it like EAP, or entrepreneurially acquired pessimism, where, I am an optimist, I think, at my heart, and I've always been an optimist. But being an entrepreneur is really interesting because you always have to plan for if everything that you're hoping happens doesn't work, and how are you going to do it without that? And it can almost build just like a fearful attitude, you know what I mean? Of like of worrying or panic. And I already just struggle with depression and anxiety. And I think the pandemic triggered a lot of that. So for me, it's like, man, I sometimes don't even want to let myself believe that is growing, because I'm like, well, but if it doesn't, what am I gonna, you know what I mean? So I think it's one of those things where on my bad days, I think I just put my head down and work and don't think about it, because I can always control the work I do, as long as I get breath in my body, but I can't control the reception of that work. So it's like, I'm gonna just work triple hard. But on a good day, like I've been trying to be more intentional about like rituals of celebration and like having fun. You know what I mean? Which are things that I like. Once you have kids and you start a business, and like you do it because you think you'll have more time, but you actually end up with way less. And I'm like, man, we gotta celebrate. Let's go eat. Let's listen to some music really loud, and like I'm gonna try not to think about work or take an email or take a call, and just be happy and reflect. And my wife and I did that yesterday. We went down to Bishop, got some brunch, and just like we were on the news yesterday. It was just like, let's just be happy about that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not gonna think about the next thing. I'm not gonna think about the next invoice that's not paid. I'm not gonna think about, how the sales are doing or the marketing or the Facebook funnel or any of that. I'm just gonna be like, man, this happened. We don't deserve this. So this is something that like God has given us, and we're gonna be happy about it. And I think that's really where I find joy, is like those moments where you really are just in the experience, and like that stuff is dope. Like when I'm in the right state of mind and not like experiencing EAP, you know what I mean? Like I'm like, it's dope. It's super dope. Like crazy. One of the crazy things that happened this year is, we talk a lot about the Oromo people, and they were kind of the first people to really be hospitable toward us from Ethiopia. They reached out, like, and obviously not all of them, but a person from the ethnic group reached out and shared a lot about his story from his culture, and just a lot of connections. And we have that on our podcast. I think it's episode 2 on our podcast with Ibrahim, who we actually just met in person recently. It was really cool. And another brother, so we put the podcast out, we did the whole thing, and kept telling the story. And then a brother who's also a Oromo and has a company called Oromo Coffee Beans, Oromo Coffee Co. in Australia, started sharing our stuff. And we got super excited. We were like, oh my gosh, it's crazy. We wanted to learn more. And he was like, actually, no, you helped us start our business. And I was like, what? He was like, yeah, we saw your brand and it inspired us to start our brand. And I was like, but you're from one of the ethnic groups who's one of the first people to discover coffee. You know what I mean? So how can I inspire? You all inspired us. Like, we're just trying to share your story. And that was such a crazy, like, Infinity War time jump experience. It was like, yo, this is really blowing my mind. And yeah, it just made me realize, like, man, the personal impact of what it means to people, I think always blows me away, because I tell people, like, we in the hood and over here in North Memphis. So I'm like, I'm not living no type of magical, you know what I mean, life. But the experiences that people happen when they interact with the brand have been like really mind blowing. So those things, like seeing those pictures, hearing those stories, like those things, like I just don't even, they don't even, I'm just super humbled and super excited, honestly, for the next, like what happens next. Like what happens when we can all organize and create opportunities for each other through coffee internationally. And like one of our goals with this trip is to build an all black supply chain. And just some brief information about what that means. Like basically, when you're not only do you see very few people in coffee in roasting, excuse me, black people in coffee in roasting or in branding or in retail, but you also see even less black people when it comes to import, export. And a lot of times, the only time you really see black people are at the production part. You know what I mean? Where the raw products are being made, and they're already having so much labor extracted from them. We're like, yo, what if we could create a supply chain? And this was kind of inspired by Dr. Claude Anderson, who talked about vertically integrating your supply chain in an industry where either the production is primarily black or the consumption is primarily black. You know what I mean? So we're in an industry where the production is primarily black and brown. And so we're like, wow, what would it look like for not only the people who grew the coffee to be black, but for the exporter to be black and for the importer to be black and for the roaster to be black and then the barista to be black and to give all that to a black customer? Like that's to me is like our really, really big, like if we can do that, I think we'll be able to really create generational change. You know, we're pretty close, man. We got a contract. I think we found the importer, the exporter. We're gonna go meet the farmers and meet the people over there who are able to make the coffee come over here. So yeah, and then we want to go hear about how is this coffee consumed and seen culturally. So that's like the biggest thing we're excited about when we go.
Wow, that's exciting. That's amazing.
Yeah, I hope so. You know, I think it's the opposite. So the next step in my mind is like, man, okay, God. So what if now we have this all black supply chain? How many businesses could be created out of this? You know what I mean? What does it look like to start warehousing coffee and being able to get that coffee to other black people who are interested in learning? Or my wife is starting this internship program where young black creatives who are interested, like between 16 and 30, who want to come learn about coffee's history from a different perspective and integrate it with our culture and learn how to make coffee can come and then be trained as a barista. And we're hoping to partner with local cafes who then could hire those baristas and we can start populating, you know, kind of like a funnel or a pipeline funnel. It's a funnel. Anyway, kind of like a pipeline where we could really start resourcing and changing the face of what you see when you walk into a coffee shop in Memphis. You can see way more black baristas, way more black owned shops. And then we would have the network to provide roasted coffee for all those people. And the whole supply chain could be black. So that's our hope. You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff gets me excited too, is thinking about what could happen in the future, you know?
For sure. I love the fact that you all are leaning into creating those opportunities for exposure. Because a lot of times, you know, we may not see someone who looks like us behind that counter or who's roasting or who, you know, created and, you know, founded this sort of company to let us know that, hey, this is possible. So I love that approach. Man, that's super exciting. Super, super exciting. Well, well, I mean, tell our listeners how they can keep up with you and everything that you're doing.
Yeah, so they can check us out on Patreon. That's going to be where I'm going to be doing daily vlogs while I'm overseas. So you can get like all the behind the scenes footage and stuff on Patreon. And then we'll also our goal is to get to 100 subscribers on Patreon. Right now we're at like 26.
Dope.
We want to get to 100 subscribers on there. You can also join our email list. Those people also are going to be getting updates. So that's a great way to follow us. Of course, there's all the socials, TikTok, and I'm really having a lot of fun on TikTok too recently, just trying to like interact with people. It's a different type of sharing, but it's more personal. So we've been over on TikTok. You can join us there. Instagram, of course. Twitter, of course. We really want to hit 1,000 followers on Twitter too, so we can start doing those Twitter spaces. We be in them Clubhouse streets every once in a while, but it's like kind of, I don't know, Clubhouse is one of them. It's a cool space for international. We've met a lot of really cool black people in coffee on Clubhouse.
Cool.
But I feel like in the States right now, it's kind of like not a thing. So that's why, like, yo, when we get to 1,000 followers on Twitter, we can do spaces, which will be
Mm.
another cool thing. So all of that, and then we have a GoFundMe right now. We still have a lot of back end fees to cover with editing and processing all the film, and trying to start saving up for a second trip here to other countries if people are interested in marketing opportunities and want to do some really cool art installations with viewing parts of the documentary alongside like learning about the Ethiopian coffee ceremony that we're going to learn about when we visit, and seeing some of those pictures. So all of that money is going to go towards that, so people can still donate on the GoFundMe. Just search Cxffee Black with an X like Malcolm X. So Cxffee Black and GoFundMe, and it'll pop up. But yeah, those are all the great ways, to follow us. We also have a coffee subscription if you want to make sure you're stocked on the good stuff. You know what I mean? That legal dope. Then we ship 2 fresh roasted bags to you every month, so you can check that out, and you get an original print from my wife's graphic design imagination. You know what I mean? So
Very
get the little
cool.
coffee corner looking real vibey.
I love it. I love
Yeah.
it. Well, no, I appreciate you chatting with us, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you all bring back from your trip, and
Same.
just the continued growth.
I'm excited. I'm really excited.
Awesome. That's episode 17 of the Showcast. Thanks again to Bartholomew Jones. To stay connected on all things Cxffee Black, visit cxffeeblack.com. You can listen to Bartholomew's music on DSPs under the name Bartholomew Jones. To keep our tradition of passing around the tip bucket, which started in 1936, please feel free to drop a small gift at levittshell.org/virtualbucket to support the Levitt Shell. Thanks again, and be sure to tune in for our next episode of the Showcast.